I never thought words could feel heavier than actions. But sometimes, it's not betrayal you see with your eyes. It's the quiet confessions that slip from someone's lips when they've stopped caring. My name is Daniel. I'm 36, an IT consultant from Denver, Colorado. My wife, Hannah, is 34. We've been married for 7 years, together for almost a decade. And if you had asked anyone just a year ago, they'd tell you we were solid. We had the house, the decent cars, the vacations once a year. We looked stable, but stability can be a mask. Behind closed doors, cracks were forming. It wasn't dramatic at first, just little signs. Hannah used to text me randomly during the day, things like miss you or can't wait for tonight. Then the messages stopped. I brushed it off. Work gets busy. Life gets heavy. No big deal. But over time, her warmth faded. She'd spend more evenings curled up on the couch scrolling through her phone instead of sitting with me at the table. She laughed more at strangers' TikToks than at my attempts to joke with her. I'd reach out to rub her back, and she'd shift slightly, not away, but not toward me either. A subtle signal that my touch wasn't needed. Still, I tried. Date nights. Flowers. Small surprises. I wasn't trying to buy her love. I just wanted to remind her of what we used to have. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she said thanks, but the spark wasn't there. It was like handing gifts to someone whose hands were already full of something invisible. The breaking point wasn't an affair, not yelling, not a fight. It was one Sunday afternoon in late spring. I had just come back from a 3-day work trip in Phoenix. I walked through the door, bag still in hand, expecting at least a small, "I missed you." That's what we used to do. Whenever one of us traveled, the reunion was always sweet. Hugs at the door, kisses that felt like reminders that distance had made the heart grow fonder. This time, she was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, gave me a quick smile, and said, "Hey, you're back." No rush into my arms. No warmth. Just acknowledgement, the same way you'd greet a neighbor returning from a trip. I set my bag down, leaned on the counter, and asked with a half smile, "Did you miss me?" She looked at me, not cold, not cruel, just flat. And she said, "Honestly, I don't really miss you when you're gone. It's kind of peaceful." Peaceful. That word hit me like a hammer. I laughed at first, thinking she was teasing. But her face didn't change. She just sipped her wine and looked back down at her phone like she'd said nothing unusual. I stood there, frozen. My chest tightened, but I kept my expression calm. Inside, though, something shifted. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her roommate, her convenience, her background noise. And when your wife tells you she doesn't miss you, what she's really saying is that your absence feels easier than your presence. I didn't argue. I didn't press. I just nodded slowly and said, "Good to know." But in my heart, I knew something had died. That night, lying next to her in bed, I stared at the ceiling while she scrolled her phone under the covers. No attempt to reach for me. No attempt to talk. Just distance. And in the silence, I made a quiet promise to myself. If she didn't feel the loss of me when I was gone, she was about to find out what it meant when I left for good. The next few days, I moved through the house like a ghost. I wasn't angry. I wasn't begging. I wasn't trying to change her mind anymore. I just observed. She laughed more at her phone than she did at anything I said. She stayed up late scrolling through TikTok while I turned in earlier, staring at the ceiling in the dark. She'd make dinner for herself without asking if I wanted any. When I cooked, she'd eat, say thanks, and go back to her screen. I started noticing little things I'd ignored before. Her phone was always face down. Her smile came easier when she was texting than when she was talking to me. When I walked into the room, she didn't light up anymore. She just shifted her posture, like she had to rearrange herself because of my presence. I didn't snoop. I didn't demand answers. I didn't need to, because the truth was already staring me in the face. I wasn't her safe place anymore. One evening, I tried to test the waters. I came home with her favorite Thai takeout, set it on the counter, and said, "Thought you'd like this." She smiled, hugged me briefly, and said, "Thanks, babe." For a second, I felt hope, like maybe this was a step back to us. But 15 minutes later, she was curled up on the couch, eating pad thai with chopsticks in one hand and her phone in the other, laughing at something on the screen while I sat across from her in silence. She didn't ask about my day. She didn't invite me to sit next to her. She didn't even look up when I tried to start a conversation. It wasn't cruelty. It was worse. It was indifference. That night, I lay awake listening to the sound of her typing in bed. I glanced over at her, blue light glowing on her face, a faint smile tugging at her lips. And it hit me. She hadn't smiled at me like that in months. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. I didn't kiss her forehead like I always did before leaving for work. I just grabbed my keys, slipped out quietly, and sat in the car for a while. The silence inside me felt heavier than the engine that hadn't started yet. At work, I couldn't focus. My mind kept looping back to her words. I don't really miss you when you're gone. It's kind of peaceful. That wasn't a slip. That wasn't a joke. That was her truth. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized she probably hadn't missed me in years. She'd just been too comfortable to say it out loud. That week, I made a decision. I started pulling back. Not in anger, not in spite, but in preparation. I stopped initiating conversations. If she wanted to talk, she could. Most of the time, she didn't. I stopped reaching for her hand on the couch. Stopped kissing her cheek when I came home. Stopped asking if she wanted to watch something together at night. And you know what? She didn't notice. Days went by, then weeks. My absence inside our marriage was invisible to her. She didn't miss my touch, my effort, or my words. Just like she didn't miss me when I was gone. But here's the thing. While she didn't notice, I did. I noticed how much lighter I felt when I wasn't chasing scraps of affection. I noticed how much calmer I was when I stopped waiting for her to choose me. I noticed how my own silence became louder than any argument we ever had. And slowly, I began preparing for the day I'd turn that silence into something permanent. The day I'd leave. It started quietly. I didn't wake up one morning and pack a suitcase. I didn't slam doors or shout ultimatums. I just began building an exit in silence. The first step was financial. I opened a separate savings account in my name. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. I transferred small amounts every week, enough to grow without catching her attention. I made copies of my important documents, passport, birth certificate, tax returns. Slipped them into a folder I kept at the office, locked in a drawer. The second step was emotional. I stopped seeing our marriage as something I could fix. For years, I carried the weight of us on my shoulders. Every date night I planned, every conversation I tried to start, every kiss I leaned in for. Those were attempts to resuscitate something she had already declared dead with one sentence. I don't miss you when you're gone. So I let go. Not all at once. Piece by piece. I started spending more time outside the house. Not with anyone else, not in bars or clubs. Just away. Long drives. Quiet evenings at a coffee shop with my laptop. Weekend hikes by myself. I realized how much space there was in my life when I wasn't begging for crumbs of affection from someone who didn't care if I was sitting right next to her or not. And here's the thing about pulling away. Eventually, they notice. At first, Hannah didn't blink. She was used to me doing the heavy lifting, so my silence just blended into her scrolling. But after a few weeks, she started asking small questions. You've been quiet lately. Everything okay? I'd shrug. Just tired. You're not around much after work. Needed some air. My answers were short, calm, unshakable. Not defensive, not angry, just done. And that unsettled her more than any argument ever could. Because for years, she knew the script. She'd pull away, I'd chase. She'd withhold, I'd overcompensate. But now, I wasn't chasing. I wasn't begging. I wasn't demanding. I was just disappearing. One evening, I came home to find dinner on the table. Something she hadn't done in months. Candles lit, soft music playing in the background. She smiled, almost nervously, and said, I thought we could eat together tonight. I sat down, thanked her, and ate. I kept my tone polite, my face calm. But inside, I knew this wasn't love, it was damage control. She wasn't trying to revive us. She was trying to hold on to control. Because the silence between us was growing, and for the first time, she felt it too. After dinner, she reached across the table, placed her hand on mine, and whispered, I don't want to lose you. Her words might have meant something once, but now, they felt hollow. Because she hadn't noticed she lost me the moment she told me she didn't miss me when I was gone. That was the night I made my final decision. I was leaving. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. And this time, I wouldn't just disappear for a work trip she found peaceful. This time, I'd disappear forever. Once I made the decision, everything changed inside me. Not in a loud way. Not in a way she could point at and say, there. That's when he gave up. No, it was quieter. Colder. like shutting off a light in a room nobody uses anymore. The mornings became easier. I didn't lean in for a kiss before leaving for work. I didn't wait for her to say, "Have a good day." I just grabbed my keys, slipped out, and let the silence fill the space where effort used to live. Evenings, too. I stopped trying to make her laugh. Stopped suggesting shows we could watch together. Stopped asking if she wanted me to cook. I'd make myself something simple, grilled chicken, rice, a salad, and sit at the table alone. She'd usually wander in later with takeout or a bowl of cereal. No effort, no care. And for the first time, I didn't feel the sting of rejection. I felt relief. Because once you stop begging for attention, the humiliation fades. But Hannah, she started noticing. It was subtle at first. A lingering glance when I walked in from work. A small frown when I chose to read in the den instead of sitting beside her on the couch. A question here and there. "Are you mad at me?" "No." "Then why are you so distant?" "I'm not distant. I'm just living." The answers rattled her more than any fight could have, because I wasn't playing the old game anymore. One Friday night, she came into the den with 2 glasses of wine. She handed me one and sat down across from me. Her voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Daniel, do you still love me?" I looked at her for a long moment. The woman I married, the one who used to run to the door when I came home, was gone. In her place was someone who only asked that question after months of silence, months of indifference, months of telling me she didn't miss me. I didn't lie, but I didn't give her what she wanted either. Instead, I said, "Does it matter? You don't miss me when I'm gone." Her eyes widened. She knew exactly what I was talking about. "That's not what I meant," she whispered. I was tired. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean it like that. But it didn't matter how she meant it. Because once words are spoken, they can't be pulled back. They echo. They stain. I sipped the wine, set it down, and stood up. "I'm going to bed." I left her sitting there, staring into her glass. That was the moment she realized something had shifted beyond repair. The next week, she tried harder. She started cooking again, asking about my day, even reaching for my hand when we walked to the grocery store. Anyone else might have thought she was rekindling our marriage. But I knew better. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of losing the man she thought would always be there. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know I had already opened a new account. She didn't know I had signed a lease on a small apartment across town. She didn't know that the bag tucked in the back of the closet wasn't just for emergencies. It was my exit plan. Every smile she gave me, every attempt at affection, every "I'm sorry" whispered too late, it didn't pull me back. It only made me more certain. Because love that only shows up when it feels threatened isn't love at all. It's desperation. And I wasn't going to stay in a marriage fueled by fear of loss instead of the joy of presence. No, I was going to leave. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. The final days felt like the calm before a storm only I knew was coming. She thought my silence was just a phase. That if she smiled more, touched my arm at dinner, or slipped into bed a little closer, I'd melt back into the man I used to be. But what she didn't know was that every attempt only pushed me further away. Because love, real love, doesn't reappear out of fear. It doesn't come back because you suddenly realize what you're about to lose. It stays, consistently, through the hard seasons. And Hannah hadn't stayed. She'd abandoned me long before I ever decided to leave. I remember the night it all came together. It was a Tuesday. She'd made spaghetti, something simple, something she hadn't cooked in months. She set the plates down, smiled like we were newlyweds again, and said, "I thought we could sit together tonight." We ate in silence, forks clinking, the soft sound of her pretending we were still us. At one point, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "I don't want to lose you, Daniel." I looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, I realized there was no anger left in me. No rage, no bitterness, no desperation. Just clarity. "You already did," I said softly. Her hand froze. She blinked, like the words were too heavy to process. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't fight. I just excused myself, went upstairs, and opened the closet. The bag was already packed. A week's worth of clothes. My documents. My laptop. My essentials. Everything else. The house. The furniture. The memories. She could keep. They weren't mine anymore. Not really. I zipped the bag slowly, walked downstairs, and placed my keys on the counter. She looked at me, confusion turning into panic. "Where are you going?" she whispered. I met her eyes one last time. Somewhere I'll be missed. And with that, I walked out. No yelling. No slammed doors. No dramatic goodbye. Just finality. The night air was cool, the street quiet. I slid into my car, started the engine, and drove. I didn't look back. Not once. I checked into the small apartment I had leased weeks earlier. A simple one-bedroom with bare walls and second-hand furniture. To anyone else, it might have looked lonely. But to me, it was freedom. That first night, I slept better than I had in years. No glow of a phone lighting up the room. No silence heavy with indifference. No woman lying beside me who confessed she didn't miss me. Just peace. Real peace. The next morning, my phone buzzed. 10 missed calls. 5 voicemails. Texts flooding in. Where are you? Daniel, please come back. I didn't mean it. I was just stressed. We can fix this. Please. But it was too late. Because love doesn't return after it's been buried under years of indifference. Respect doesn't come back once it's been trampled by casual words like "I don't miss you" when you're gone. She wanted peace when I wasn't around. Now she had it. Permanently. And for the first time in a long time, so did I.